Everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again. This is Saved You a Seat. We are on, believe it or not, episode 15, and we are going to talk about how to customize SoftPro for your business this morning. And I'm actually really excited to see this. I don't get to see a lot of the customization, so thankfully for you all, I am not going to be the one talking. You get a break from me. You are going to be hearing from one of our wonderful employees, Ms. Karen Benelli, and she works with customization and implementation for our customers. And some of you may have actually already know her or work with her, but we are going to allow her to go through and talk about it. And she's going to actually show you some of the stuff in the program, which is great. Just some housekeeping. Per usual, we will send a follow-up recording in a day or two. We will include the PowerPoint. Now, remember, this one is kind of more of a hands-on. So Karen was nice enough to create a PowerPoint to go with it. So if you are looking at it later or you just kind of want a refresher, you can review it. But the recording will show what you see today so that you can go back and see how she did some stuff if you're interested. There's going to be a couple things that Karen mentions that she won't be able to take you through the whole thing, but it may be something that you need to contact SoftPro for. I think she was thinking about starting kind of with the most basics and moving on to more advanced. So just keep your mind open that there's a lot that can be done. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat feature or the questions box, and we will try and get to as many as we can. If we don't have time or we don't get to your question during the webinar, we will for sure answer it post, and we will send it as part of the follow-up so everybody can see the answers to it. So please just send us all your questions, and like I said, if we don't get to it, we will certainly follow up and include it in our recap email. Also, for some of you that may have joined early, the phone number was not working. Our wonderful Ellen Crema at SoftPro fixed it. And so if you need to call in from your phone, please go ahead and do so. You are able to go ahead and do that now. Otherwise, you can use your computer speakers. So with that, I'm going to stop talking for once. And I'm going to turn it over to Karen and let her show you all the cool stuff that you can customize. And I will say one caveat. She is going to be, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, but she is going to be highlighting Select today. If you are a Classic customer, she will definitely let you know. This is something you can do in both. If it's something that's very specific to Select, then she will let you know. Most of the beginning stuff you can do in both, but I'm going to let Karen take over. She knows much more than I do. So Karen, thank you so much for doing this for us, and it's all yours.
My pleasure. Thank you, Leslie. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for participating. I have Select open right now, and okay, it's I just got a pop-up, Leslie. The organizer stopped sharing your webcam. It's no longer visible. Can everyone see my screen? Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, yep.
Okay, then I'll ignore that. So the first thing I want to talk about is how to, as Leslie mentioned, how to customize SoftPro Select to meet your business needs. And, you know, a lot of the reasons we do this is for you to put processes and work processes in place so that your users will be able to obviously generate an order and push it from beginning to end with much more expedience. So here, I'm going to first come to the ProForm tab, and I have all the tabs up at the top, but I'm going to touch on this because I'm going to presume that you're in the application and you're working in it every day. And as Leslie mentioned, I'm going to start with some basic things and then go from there. So if I were to create a new order, I'm going to come up here, and there's 3 different ways that you can do that, but this isn't necessarily a training session. So I wanted to mention, if anyone wanted to use a prefix or a suffix to create a new order, one of the reasons we do that is, let's say that you want to report off of a county. You want to see how many orders you came in from that came in from a specific county. You can choose your prefix to create your order number, and then when you run your report, this will show, say, all the orders from Albany or whatever you want to use as a prefix. It holds either 2 or 3. It holds up to 3 characters or numbers, and you can also use a suffix as well. Your order number can be configured however you want it to, and the space here holds up to 30 characters. Then you can make the trust account, let's say you have more than one trust account, if you want to have it where the user chooses the trust account right before they disperse, you have that ability in your profile settings to do that, or it can be defaulted to the trust account you're going to use. The next thing here is your settlement type, whether it's a closing disclosure, commercial, or HUD-1, and this also can be configured in your profile settings. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to search for a template. And as you can see on the search box here, we have orders and templates, and I'm just going to hit search because I know how many templates I have. And a template, so I'm going to grab this. A template houses, it's like a big puzzle. It houses all your static information. So you want to use that when you create a brand new order, whether it be for a purchase or a refinance, maybe it's a guarantee. That way you have settings in here for your users so they're not repetitively typing every single time your company name, maybe the contacts that you use. So I'm going to hit cancel here. And now I'm in my order and I have 2 orders opened. We recommend that you have 1 order opened at a time, but this is for demonstration purposes. And I want to talk about the contacts. So here, if I come to my contacts page and I look at them and I hit the plus sign, SoftPro has 27 different types of contacts that we can use. And then we have a catch-all called other contact type. Maybe you're working with a title closer, an examiner, something that we don't necessarily have a specific contact for. You can use your other contact if it's for utilities, something like that. I'm going to click into this attorney contact here, and let's talk about how we manage lookup tables. So in here, you can see I've got as a code AAB 982. This represents the first 2 or 3 letters of the company name, and then the county or the city that they're in, Bayport, and then the street number. If you so are inclined, it's really helpful to have a naming convention for your lookup tables. They're all your little databases, they're your repositories. So if a user can't remember a code, they can probably walk themselves through what the code would be if they know what city it's in. So when they retrieve that entry, the code will come in as well. It's really helpful in that instance. Now here I can see this county is not filled in, so we're going to find another one. I'm going to come over here and let's pull this entry in because it has Nassau County in it. And the reason I bring this up is in this particular state, they charge sales tax. We have a sales tax manager in SP admin that will automatically calculate your sales tax for you. So as long as I have the county and the city in my contact, when I come over to this screen, and we'll talk about screens, this county populates in and it automatically calculates the sales tax for me. So that when I get to my invoice or I get to my CD, my settlement statement, the sales tax is already presented and my user does not have to calculate that manually. That's something that you would set up in SP admin, or your implementation configuration specialist would do that for you. It's a real benefit. All right, let's move down to property information. Here you can see again, this screen is also customized. Most of them are in this layout. And I want to mention a custom field. So SoftPro comes with what we call native fields. And then we also have documents and or reports that may have an entry in there or a field that is not part of SoftPro. So we add that, and that's called a custom field. So in this case, the premise is here, the street number and the street name. We did not have fields for that, so we added them. Actually, our document developer adds those. And so I'm going to hit my Alt-Shift-6 key, and it shows me what my field code is. So it shows me street number _ F&F pound. Whatever your organization is, it's going to show you that it's a specific custom field for your operation. This is really beneficial for this particular client because they have an integration with 360 Superior Data Services, and it picks up the street number and street name. So when I type it in here, I'm going to hit F2 to delete it. And you notice when I remove it, it removes the property address here. So if I type in 25 again, hit my tab key, it populates down here. So the user only has to enter this one time. As you can see, this type is in black, this is in red. that means that this information pushed forward, and I have a formula in here that will push that information so my user doesn't have to do it. If I overwrote that, then it turns red, and I can tell that a user changed this, not the application. It wasn't pushed forward. So if I F2 again, now it's in black. I'm so used to saying any questions, but we're going to move on to the next session, and that is tasking. I don't know how many of you use tasks, but I think they're fabulous to track our work. This client did not want to have to come up to the ribbon up here. They wanted their users to continue to follow their work process. So we created a My Screen called Searches and Services, because in this instance, they could order 20 or 30 searches at one time in one file. So they need the ability to add one task or multiple tasks at the same time. So if I come up here and I hit my quick add and I type in, let me see, I type in, give me 1 second. Oh, PKG. That is going to give me 3 tasks at one time. This is configured and this is customized by what's called an unmapped field in your lookup tables, and I'll show you that in just a second. But now I can pull all these tasks in, retrieve them at one time, and they all populate for me. To do that, we would come into SP Admin under Configuration, and this is in our release notes as well. I find this really nice to be able to use instead of a custom field that I have to ask my document developer to create for me. So you have the ability to do that. If I come to this layout, this is what an unmapped field looks like. So I had just typed in .pkg, and then when I do that, let's just do pkg1, this becomes available on this ribbon, and when I click it, it gives me another unmapped field. So that's an alternative to using a custom field when it's housed within a lookup table. So I'm going to cancel that, come out of here, and let's continue to look at our tasks. So I have several searches that I need to order. As you can see, this first one is highlighted, and everything at the bottom is reflective of that particular task. So this shows me my code. This shows me my task name. I can use this category to filter out my tasks, and this is a global dropdown, which means everybody that's using your environment would see these particular categories, and this helps you filter that information. This shows me if the task is required, requested, received, or NA. I'm going to mark it received. And when I do that, it date stamps it for me, the task due and the receive date. It puts a little green check here, and it tells me now my bankruptcy search is ready. But one thing further is I can configure if it's a taxable search or not, a taxable item. I can set a fee here if I want to. I can also configure it so that my contact is automatically billed and I can see who that contact is. And I can choose a line, whether it's a commercial line or a CD line, for that to automatically go there. So my user only has to be in one place to make all of this happen. All right. Then we can also trigger, like I said, one task to the next. So if I mark my bankruptcy search as completed or received, it may key off of abandonment map certification, whatever I need to do. In my checklist tasks, they decided to use what's called internal tasks. So this is your work process. This is what your users do day in and day out. They're not ordering something from an outside vendor. They are working in their file, and they need a checklist of what they need to do and what order. So it could go to different departments. It could stay in one department. The person could work the file from beginning to end. But they wanted an outline of where does this file go. So I have my order received. I have it goes to the title plant, my examination. It's typed. It's distributed. And then it goes to policy. So we have, if I came up to my ribbon, we have checklist tasks. And if you look at this screen, this is the SoftPro screen. And we look at, and it says checklist tasks. If we look at internal tasks, it says closing coordinator here, a project name. So we have reconfigured this My Screen based on their needs. And also the searches and services, which is actually your requested tasks, we've done the same thing. They wanted to see the properties that are in the order, the property county, and then their tasks below it, because it gives them a very quick visual and they don't have to go back to the property screen. They can search by the project name in your search field. Very,
Hey,
very
Karen.
beneficial. Uh-huh.
I have two questions specific to what you were talking about. I was hoping I could interrupt you real quick and ask.
Sure.
Okay, great. One is she said, are you in the enhanced screens or the standard SP screens?
I am in enhanced screens. So if I
Okay.
come here and look at the SoftPro screens, and that's a great question. Anybody who purchases SoftPro, this is what you start out with. If you purchase, whether you purchase a package, an implementation package, or you just want My Screens created for you, we have a configuration team that does that. I write all my own screens for our clients, and we go through every field, every screen. And then here, there are multiple sets of My Screens as well. Let's say that you have folks that only work in title, they can have a set of title screens. If they only work in escrow, they can have a set of escrow screens. So it's dependent on what your work process is, how your business functions.
Okay. And then someone else, I think you kind of just answered this, but someone else just asked, does SoftPro have to create these custom screens for us, or is there a way for us to do it on our own? And then someone else piggyback that with, can I add or change my own screen? So it's kind of the same question.
So that is something that SoftPro needs to do for you. And there are a couple of reasons for that. There are certain tools that we use internally to create the My Screens. And it's something that is just what we do. The same with custom fields. Best practice would be let SoftPro add your custom fields to your document bundle, is what it's called. Let that be included so that you don't write a custom field and SoftPro doesn't write one, because it has a tendency then to not know which field to choose. So you want SoftPro to do that for you. Good questions, though.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too. One thing I learned the hard way is another reason, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, another reason that you really want SoftPro to do it is because you want to make sure whatever changes you're making or adding or taking away doesn't have a domino effect on, say, a document or a report that might be looking to that field or something, or isn't looking to a custom field. So you can break something if you don't have, someone going through it from start to finish for you.
That's exactly right. And I've broken my share of My Screens. I'll tell you, and I've done them for a long time, so we don't want you to do that. But they are not difficult to design. And like I said, you'd be working with a team member that would be an expert at that too. And it's really, really helpful. As an example here, they did not want this to be called order entry or express order entry. They wanted it to be called, this is their open order screen, but application page. And the reason is that's the first thing they send out to their client. So it was intuitive to their users to be able to call this application page. And we'll get to that a little more in My Screens in just a moment. Any more questions on that topic?
No, I think we're good so far.
Okay. So back to the internal tasks here. I wanted to mention, let's say, again, these look a little bit different because as you can see, there's not as many choices at the bottom down here. I don't have requested, I don't have received because these are internal tasks. So the first thing I need to do is create my application. And when I mark that completed, it triggers who does the next task, whether it be a user or whether it be what we call a bin. And without confusing you too much, I'm going to come down here to my work items and I'm going to pin this. And let's say that you can see I have several tasks here. I have my orders and I have my tasks. So I can have a number of orders, and it shows me 67 here that I'm responsible for finishing. And then I have 114 tasks because I could be assigned to multiple tasks in one file. That's how I would manage this. If I'm a manager and I want to look at other team members or my employees' tasks and or how many orders they have, I can add myself to a view so I can see these. And these are all set up in SP Admin as well. If I want to mark all my tasks completed at one time or some of them, I can come up to, this is a custom integration and it's called a task manager. And let's say I finish this abandonment and this abstract only task. I can check both of these off. I can mark it completed and say apply. And when I do that, the changes were applied to my order. So depending on my work process, I can come up here at any point in time and mark my tasks completed. I can also do that down here by highlighting, 2, 3, whatever have you, and mark those tasks completed as well. Going along with tasking, we have reports that will show you, and they're standard reports that come with Proform, that show you various tasks, order task reports here. However, sometimes you have to have those customized, and maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I don't want to pay for a custom report. However, we can create what's called a work list. This is it's a simple query, and I can create these on my own. This is not something SoftPro has to do for you, and we have job aids that will explain how you create a work list. And the benefit of this is I want to know how many closings I have today, as an example. So if I run this list, and notice I have it pinned over here on the right-hand side, I can see how many closings I have. I can see my settlement date, my order status, my buyer, my seller, and I can set up these columns by myself. If I come to options here, it shows me all the selected columns, the fields that appear across here. So if you think of it like Excel, you can build your own columns, you can build your own work list based on what you want to see. If it's a week, if it's a day, if you want to run it daily, if you want to run it weekly. Another thing you can do, on the left-hand side, it says available columns here, and I can see all the various fields that are available. And we continue to add to these, which is really nice. Then I would just grab, if I wanted this available column, and move it over here. I can move this up and down if I want to, and that's going to make it show up within my columns here, the order of which it is. Also, let's say that I want my order number, the width of it, to be 150 characters, not 100. I can change that, and when I apply it and say OK, it makes that column wider, so I don't have to take my cursor and move it over. So you have a lot of decisions you can make, but you can control this on your own. If I come to sorting here, I can say how I want this sorted. I don't have any choices here, so it's fine. And then I can also refresh my results, because let's say I run this throughout the day. It's dynamic. I can see what orders have been finished, because once this is done, then this falls off of my work list. This also can be printed, and my employees can print it as well. We have the ability to create a work list. If I come up here, let me see here, and I add new, we have several different ways that you can create a work list. If you want to look at your group deposits, your ledgers, your tasks. So it really depends on what you want to do, what you want to monitor, versus having a full custom report created for you. People use this a lot with their tasking, because then I can see, oh, I've got this many tasks completed and I have this many closings today, as an example. If I want to do it on a user level, I can do that too. Amanda wanted her own work list as an example. So she built that for herself. She doesn't have anything assigned to her today. But if she did, it would show up on her work list and no one else could see it. This particular work list for Closing Calendar is shared, so anyone that comes in here can run this. All righty, any questions on that?
I do have a question. Somebody asked, is it possible to run a work list for workflow status?
For workflow status, meaning workflow when you submit to workflow?
I'm not sure. It just says, is it possible to run a work list for, oh, and never mind. The person just said yes. That's what they're asking.
I don't think so. I would have to test that to see, but I can certainly take that as a note, as an action item, and get back to you on that. Because work lists are not related necessarily to workflow when you hit the submit button. But we may be able to configure something so that you get the same results that you want.
Okay, I'll flag this question so we know to follow up, and we'll include it in the recap, but we can also reach directly out. Hi, Tara, how are you? Tara just said, workflow does not report to work list. We have moved to tasks for this and also automation. Just
Is
putting
that
that
right,
out there.
Tara? Okay, yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Tara. I don't have to go back to that one then.
Yeah, so Kendall, if you're listening, it looks like workflow does not report to a work list. We will double check and make sure nothing has changed, but at this point, it looks like they moved to tasks for this and automation, which I know we're going to talk a little bit about. So,
All right. Good question. Okay, so I'm going to come back to my order again. I'm going to close out of this, and we're going to talk about my screens a little bit. So here, as we mentioned before, if I come up to my order and I come up to my screens, as you can see, I have several different sets of my screens. These are based on what group you sit in and how you want these customized. So if I have multiple states that I'm working in and I want to see screens for New Jersey or screens for New York or screens for another client, I can do that within the application, and the users that belong to the New Jersey offices will only see their screens. The users that belong to New York will only see theirs, and on it goes. So it's very easy to configure that, again, in SP Admin or with your configuration and or implementation manager. So when we customize screens, like I said, let's go back to the SoftPro screens for a second. And when I look at these, I see express order entry, order information, status, order contacts. But maybe these names and this workflow here on the screens is not really conducive to how I work through a file. So what I would want to do then is possibly change my screens. And like I said, that's something that you talk about with, we work with you on that. So I'm going to come back here. And again, I mentioned application page. So this is what customization would be. If I look at this, I have a rush order up here. These containers are called snap sections. So not every field is a field unto itself. In other words, this transaction type, this middle section, and this section here all come as one section. So if somebody said, hey, I want to move that to my to the bottom of the screen, I could do that, but it's all going to come together. This rush order box is going to come by itself because it's a field by itself. When I come to report due date, this is another custom field. And again, if I hit my Alt F6 key, I can see that it's a custom field and how it's written. Then I have related orders and I have project name because they wanted to see any order that was related. Maybe I did a purchase and, you know, a couple of years later, somebody comes back for a refinance. I can copy over the information from that original order, so I'm not retyping several bits of the file. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. And then my project name, as I mentioned before, you can search by this. Then I have my loan section here. They don't necessarily refer to a loan as the principal amount of a loan. They call it a mortgage amount in this particular instance. So we put a label above that so the users, it would be a little more intuitive for them. And the same thing with sales price. They don't call it sales price, they call it fee amount. So one thing here to keep in mind is if it is a native SoftPro field, in other words, if the field comes with SoftPro, when you purchase it, we can't, with my screens, one thing we can't do is change this label, out of the box label. But what we can do is put a label above it so it's a little easier for your user to understand. Another good example of that is if I come down here and I look at this order dates closing location, this screen again here. So if I look at this, I'm sorry, I went to the wrong screen. I want to go here. Nope. Searches and services. So as you can see, closing coordinator, this is just a label that I added because they want them to put the project name in here. So it's important that when we are talking about my screens, the do's and don'ts of what I can do and what I can't do. And that you'll go through in much more detail should you choose to configure your screens. We can also, as we talked about, rename a screen. I have application page, I have searches and services, I have internal tasks, I have company charges. This is actually your additional title charges screen, but they changed it to company charges because it made more sense. You can relocate a My Screen. So as you can see up here, I have the application page, and I also have it down here. So it can be in several sections. In other words, if my order desk was working on these screens, and then my folks that generated what's called a title bill or a statement, they were working in these screens, then they wouldn't have to jump back and forth. So this is the section that they would use. Some folks go as far as to create different sets of my screens, like I said previously, for escrow and or title. But we found over time that users really don't like to switch back and forth and back and forth. Maybe they wear multiple hats. Maybe they're creating a file from beginning to end, and they want to just see the section they need to work in. My screens are created in groups, not individual users, so you want to keep that in mind if and when you have these created for you, so you make it less complicated for the user as opposed to, having them change constantly in a file. Any questions on that?
Let's see. I might just. Someone said, would using different screens change any of the figures?
No, they will not. That's a great question. One of the things, though, to keep in mind is, let's say that I have a document that's coded to a field. A field is a field. It's the same field code. We'll go to the property screen as an example. And so in here, it says Riverhead, the city of, in the state of New York, and my zip code in the county of Suffolk. Let's say I have a document coded to this field. And I go to my document, I render it, and I come back to the screen. It's going to take me back to the SoftPro screen. However, it is going to be the exact same field because the field code is the same. So as you go through that with a specialist, they'll emphasize that more, and that's something that we talk about in training. I think of it sometimes as a cake. I have a plain cake that I baked, and then I have icing on top. And what flavor do I want on the top? How can I layer it? So as long as my users understand, when I go back to it, it's going to take me to the same field. I can update that field, and I can go back to my document, refresh it, and I'm done. So that was a very good question. All right, I want to touch on documents for a second. Here, we can customize your document trees. I don't know if any of you have had that done, but that's where you would work with your document manager, your document specialist, and you can put all of your documents in various folders, and you can put them in subfolders as well. So I can see that I have letters here, and if I open this up again, I have letters here as well. So depending on what you send out when, if you send out a package, an opening package or a closing package or starting package, like I mentioned, an application page, if you want to put that in a particular folder for your user, it makes it much faster if they can pull everything over at one time and generate that information. I can also remove all if I pulled the wrong documents at the wrong time. A feature that we have that I really like is favorites. This is on a user level. So if I say, oh, I use this affidavit of understanding and indemnity all the time, I can take it and drag it up here into my folder. And now I don't have to hunt for it. I don't have to search for it. It's in my favorites, and it will stay there. So as you can see, this little arrow shows me that this is in my favorites folder. And anybody can create a new folder. You just right-click on your favorites and create new. Let's pull over this document, and let's take a look at it. So I'm going to preview it. And it shows me that I have two properties. I only want to look at the one. And when I do this, these are called quick prompts, so I can answer this or not. And we want to, when you're having your documents created, be very clear in what you want that prompt to say so it doesn't slow down your user. And then this one is another prompt. I'm just going to skip it for now. And now I have my document. Let's say that I've got to get this out right now, and I don't. And this is something that you choose as a permission within your organization. So if I want to take this document and put it in what's called edit mode up here, if I have permission, I can do that. And it changes the text to all black. Then maybe the date is the 17th. Now the best practice would be to go back to your file and change the date here. But if for some reason you need to change it and you want to do it right then and there, you can do that, like I said, with permissions. and I've changed it. But now it is not connected to my file any longer in SoftPro, to my Proform order. It is simply a Word document by itself, which is fine. People use this all the time, but you want to know the do's and don'ts about it on when I should use this and when I shouldn't. And I'm sure you have many examples on if this is the case that you need to use it. If I make a mistake and I say, oh, darn it, I really didn't mean to put this in edit mode, I can come back up here again and hit revert. And it says, do you want to restore your default version? And I do. So I'm going to say yes. And now it re-renders. I'm going to skip my prompt. And now it's back to the way it was. So in this case, there's been many a discussion, setting up a client. Do they want to give their users permissions to edit a document or do they not? There's pros and cons to each, because for me personally, each site that I've set up, there's usually a discussion on, I only want a certain handful of users to be able to edit a document. And that's fine. And so we can make a custom group where those users would have what's called a plus permission, and you can put them in that particular group. So it wouldn't be opened up to the whole organization. Maybe it's just your managers that can edit the document. And that holds true with all the permissions within SoftPro, as I'm sure you're probably all familiar with. There are many, many permissions. And saying that, you can have a permission set up where if a user is not allowed to do something and all the other users are, we can set up what's called a deny group. So they could never make a mistake, maybe your sales reps or something like that. You don't want them touching your commitment date, as an example. You can certainly set that up too. And we would work with you on how you do that, how you configure your groups. The next thing I want to touch on are custom order rules. I'm going to come back to this order again, and I'm going to go back to my contacts. And notice where this star is here. This tells me that's my marketing source. So if I remove it, I don't even have to go to the contact to do that. If I remove that and I try to save my file, I get this pop-up, it can't be saved. The order has unresolved errors. Any outstanding errors must be resolved before this order can be saved. So what do I need to do? I'm just going to simply say okay. And now it shows me down here, this order must contain at least one marketing source. So if I click that, it takes me back to my contacts. I can highlight, hit the star again, and save it. It's taken a minute, but it saved it. And so now that little asterisk is gone, and it saved my file. Another thing that we can set up for you is, and there are many, many order rules that can be set up. That's a very basic one, but it's something that we can definitely do for you. This invoice and final bill here, a lot of times previously to order rules or automation or anything, if we set up a template for you that houses all your static information, we would have to put a formula behind here to add multiple invoices. We don't have to do that any longer. We can put a business rule in there. So if I hit my plus sign, it adds another invoice for me, another invoice line, and I can start over again instead of me having to type that number in so it matches the numbers above it. And this is really handy to have as well. I've seen it where clients will have, 5 invoices defaulted, and you really don't need to do that necessarily unless you have fees going to the second invoice, the third invoice, the fourth, and on and on. This rule will prevent you from having to do that because you can just simply hit the plus sign or train your user to do that. And like I said, there are many, many custom rules that we can set up for you. Here, the next thing I want to show you are some of our integrations. One of them, specific to New York, is New York has multiple taxes that these poor people have to pay. So we have built out what's called a utility to automatically calculate those taxes. And remember before I had mentioned we needed to make sure that in our contacts, we had our county field in there. Part of the reason is it's tied to our calculation. So this is something you build when you're building your lookup table. You add your county along with your city here, so it calculates the sales tax. And then when I come up here, if I have a sales price and a loan amount, or a mortgage and a fee, and I come up here, I want this to calculate by recording fees for me. So here I can see it's going to send it to a particular section. If I'm in a CD order, it will send it to section CG. Shows you how long I've been in there. It's going to send you to the correct section. It shows you the city, the county, the property type, who it's occupied by, the sales price, the amount of the loan. Now, in here, if I change city from Riverhead to something else, it will go back and talk to the field in SoftPro on that property screen, and it will update it. The same with the county, with any one of these fields. If I change my sales price here, and I say, okay, my sales price is going to be updated in my sales price field, and I'll show you that in just a second. So this, I've already posted some taxes, so I get this pop-up and it says, this data was previously added. Do you want to override it? Are you sure? So it's not, to dismiss it would not be efficient, right? So I'm going to say yes because I changed my sales price, so I know my calculation is going to be different. So it's doing the calculation. I'm going to come over here to my statement charges, and when I do, and I come down here, it's calculated in my recording section all the taxes for me. So it put my buyer's debit in the right column, my seller's debit, my mortgage tax, my conveyance tax, and if there's a lender tax, because a lender pays a 1/4 point on a mortgage tax if it's a purchase transaction. It does it very quickly. It follows the same fee schedules that it would follow on a CD or a HUD. If I came behind this line and I looked at this, I can see it's in black. This is configured for a city county tax stamps, and the document is a deed, and it shows me my fee schedule. If I drop this down, this is normally what a user would do if they had multiple fee schedules. They would have to choose each one of these. Well, by using this utility, they don't have to pick anything. It's taken the guesswork out of it. If there is a fee that changes, whether it be your county recording tax, your CPF taxes, your mortgage tax, SoftPro updates that for you. Either you let us know, our rates and teams, or rates and formulas team, which we have. It's an internal team as well. And then we would go into SP admin and update that for you. In the meantime, let's say that a rate changes, and this was supposed to be $15,000. I can certainly highlight this and override it. So it's not the end of the world, until my rates get updated again. But it's a very nice feature to have. Again, if I come back to my sales price or my fee, it updated it to $987 for me. So when I look at this, it matches. So the user doesn't necessarily have to go back to the screen. All the other boxes here are related to things that happen in New York, but let's say in Kentucky, they have sales tax. If there's something that I need to configure for that, I have a sales tax manager, and I can set that up for sales tax. And then posting taxes would be something that we would have to discuss on a new integration. Any questions on that?
Well, I do have 2 questions, not specifically to that, but something you were speaking about right before it. So one of them says, can you have the same field in more than one screen? And can you have the same screen in 2 different sections? For example, order setup. Can you have RH and title bills in 2 different areas?
You absolutely can. Here's an example right here. I have the application page here, and then I have it right here. Same screen.
Perfect.
And as far as thank you. And as far as a field, yes, you can have the same field in multiple places as well. So if I update it, it's going to push it back and forth if it's the same field.
If it's the same field. Okay. All right. And then the next question is, does the ability to edit in SP directly, in SoftPro directly, require a Pro Design license?
No, it does not.
Okay. That is all the questions I have.
Perfect. And let me go back to that because that was a really good question, which leads me to something else. So in SoftPro, you may already know this, but I'm not sure. So if I have an invoice, and I'm going to preview this. So we have what are called Ready Docs and Ready Doc reports. This happens to be a report, even though it's in my document tree. So if I try to edit this, as you can see, this, even though I have permissions to edit, this is not available. And that's how I know that I can't edit this particular Ready Doc report. So as you go through those, the same with your settlement statement, the same holds true with anything that would justify a report which has higher calculations on it. So our developers build this out as a report versus a document. So there is a difference, and that's something to keep in mind. And you would work with your doc developer and or report specialist to configure that, whether it needs to be a document and or a Ready Doc report. So that was a good question, and thank you. That reminded me to mention this as well. All righty. So the last thing I have here is best practices. So in here, we want to talk about what are our best practices. So when should I contact SoftPro, and when can I do something on my own? So as I mentioned earlier, I can build work lists on my own. I can build tasking on my own. I can configure these tables by myself. I can hit the plus sign here. Here is a task. These are all driven by permissions. So if I have permission to modify a lookup table, to add to a lookup table, I can certainly do that. But it's something I can do within my organization. And we have job aids on all of these as well. If I want to reconfigure my lookup table, as I mentioned before, this is not a standard field that would be part of the layout of this screen. So this is a custom field, this search name, because my user wanted to see this name and this code as well. This goes with an integration. The fee is another one that I added in here, but I grabbed this from the SoftPro field down here. So I can build out my lookup tables. There's a lot of flexibility with these. And if I want to, I can take this category. Let's say that the category is the most important thing for me. I can drag this column over, move it, there we go, and continue to move it so that when I come into my lookup table, it's one of the first things that I see versus the description or something like that. And that's just as an example. So I can continue to drag this column over. It's being a little ornery with me. There we go. If I want to see that. And when I go out and come back in again, it's going to stay in the same location. That is also user specific. So it's not something that would be a group permission or a group has to do that. You can do that on your own at any point in time in any one of the lookup tables, which I personally think is really nice. Another thing that we don't necessarily want to add by ourselves are custom fields. And the reason we don't is, as Leslie mentioned, we don't want to break anything necessarily, right? And we want to make sure that it's configured in the right way. When you're creating my screens and we're working with document developers, we have what's called a context to each screen. So this particular application page / order entry page is written on the context of order. So anything that has a field code, if you're familiar with field codes and formulas, is going to show you. So if I come in here again, that's why these are really important. It shows me the context here is order. If I were to go to my commitment screen, it's going to show me the context there as commitment. And sometimes worlds collide and they don't play nice together. So that's why you want your implementation or your configuration specialist to work with you on my screens, because they're going to understand what can go where. I don't necessarily want to take some of my property information and put it on my title insurance premium screen. So it's based on how that's configured. Okay, that's what I have, Leslie.
Awesome. Thank you. This has been so great, so much information. It looks like somebody asked a question here at the end. It says, what were the keys to pull up the field information?
Oh, Alt F6. Let me do that again. I find that real handy myself. Alt
Yeah,
F6
I
on your
actually don't
keyboard.
think I knew that.
Oh, good. Yes. Now you can always use your field code browser. You know, I have the work list up right now. We tend to use that too, but I personally think it's faster to use that, you know, because you can see the field, the description, the type of what it is. So when you're writing a formula, if you are or anything like that, you can certainly use that.
Okay, great. I think you answered most of the questions. Let's see, push Alt F6. Okay, yeah. This was really great. I actually didn't know how to do a lot of these, which is not going to surprise most people on the call. I don't work in the program hardly ever. I can still do a closing disclosure or a HUD, but I don't know all the bells and whistles, which is pretty cool to see. I know most of this was select driven, and I know the email that went out highlighted that it would be mostly select, but we can include a couple things probably in our recap email, some job aids that we have for Classic as well, if that might be helpful for some people. But if anyone has any questions, please, please, please feel free to reach out either to myself or Karen or both. We will certainly find the answer or someone who can help you. If you are interested in customizing your screens or anything, automation or anything like that that Karen was mentioning or showed you, you can always reach out to me or Karen, but you can also reach out to your support rep. I just said support rep, your sales rep. You can reach out to your sales rep, and they can hook you up with whomever and get you started and point you in the right direction. So as usual, we are going to end this with recipes. They're just a fun thing we do at the end of them. I have to tell you, I live in Chicago, as many of you know, and it is actually pretty cold here right now. It's cold and rainy. It's like 39 degrees. So we've been eating a lot of fall food the past week, which we don't hate. We just hate the 39 degrees so early. But we just made this week. It's one of our favorites. My kids absolutely love baked potatoes. I actually do not, oddly enough. But I do love baked potato soup for some reason. So we decided to share one of our family fall favorites. It looks like a lot on the screen, but I will tell you it takes about less than 30 minutes to make start to finish. It's so easy. It's so good. So per usual, if you make it, email me, let me know. I love hearing the feedback. People email me all the time during the week and let me know what they've tried and not tried. So that's always fun. And Karen, if you go down the next
Sure.
slide, we we always try and keep our drinks seasonal. So now we've moved on to apple cider Moscow mules. Basically, it's a Moscow mule with apple cider in it. Very, very easy. Obviously, you can change the measurements to fit what you want or not want, but I do recommend it. It's absolutely delicious. My husband, weirdly enough, likes it heated up. I do not. So him, it's like a warm apple cider, but I'm not a big fan of that. But if you like it, if not, serve it over rice. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Mostly, I want to thank Karen. This was so great. I loved watching everything. I don't, like I said, I don't normally get to see all the cool stuff that it does. So I really wanted to just thank you for taking the time and putting together that presentation. And for everybody that joined us, thank you. A reminder, we will send a recap email per usual. Usually we send it out Wednesday or Thursday. If anyone has any questions, just go ahead and send them our way. Otherwise, look for our next Saved You a Seat coming your way. Marketing, Ellen Kremel will be sending that out with our topic. And we look forward to, I can't actually say seeing you all, but all of you joining us again. And at some point, seeing you all. So thank you so much. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, everybody. And I hope everyone has a great week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.